Welcome to the Survival Prepper Show, where being labeled a crazy prepper is a badge of honor. Learn about disaster preparedness, survival, and get ready for whatever challenges might come your way. This is not your typical prepping podcast, and they won't be silenced by the censors. Here are your hosts, Duff and Dale.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the show this week. Made it here. I think I'm finally pulling through all this crap, just the end residual nonsense going on, the brain fog and all that crap. But and go figure, just in time, there's a new variant out that absolutely you get zero immunity from any other sort of COVID. So, there's a chance I get that too. So, what what else is new? Not surprised at all. Murphy's Law at it again with me. Anyway, what are you up to, Brian? Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, yeah. Nah, you've been bioweapon, man.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, man. It's got to be some sort of global concerted effort because nobody's complaining about this. Nobody's saying anything about it. So it's got to be. I don't know. My conspiracy brain can go off for hours on this crap, but it's got to be something that everybody's got their fingers in the pie, and everybody's like, "Woo, we're not going to say anything. Let's just go with the bat theory, the wet market theory."
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the gig, right? Like literally around the world. I mean, there are people who've died from this, and there are people who just gotten really sick and missed work and had just miserable times. And it's like, hey, everybody, let's just keep on going.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about some of that today, what they're doing in China right now, which isn't, I don't think, really an indication of what's going to go on around the world because China locks down at the drop of a hat. So, who knows what that means. But we're going to talk about it as it has to do with the supply chains and stuff like that as well. There's more stuff that with Hunter Biden come out. So I did want to talk about that today. You found some stuff, and it seems like this guy, I mean, he can't put down the crack pipe, but two, he can't stop recording. I just don't understand how this dude's got to record every little thing. Or if he's not recording every little thing, what is it how bad is the stuff he's not recording? Because, I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. No, it'd be interesting to talk about that because, you got a bunch of people on the left that are like, oh, you shouldn't be picking on him. He has a problem and all this. And it's like, yeah, I get that part, but his dad is, I think we got the video of it, right? His dad is literally on video calling for people that have any amount of crack, do all kinds of prison time, lose everything they own. And this guy, he falsified, his gun background application and everything. And then this, it's like, come on, man. Like, what do you need more to show you that, for people to look at the two systems of justice and for people on the left to not be calling this stuff out? It's just, maybe they don't know. I don't know. Maybe they don't know because they're not seeing it from,
I think it's incredibly disingenuous to say that, leave the guy alone. He's got a problem, because I think it's a lot bigger than that issue. And we'll get into that. We're also going to talk about some of the stuff more, the developments in Sri Lanka. And I want to kind of talk about that as far as how it kind of affects us here as well, because all of these situations like this, they kind of play out the same way. There might be minor differences and all that. But when you're talking about this stuff going on with different governments throughout history, it kind of plays out the same way. So there's a lot of things we can learn from it, just like the stuff that happened in Venezuela and Greece and all that stuff. So it may not unfold exactly like that here in the United States, and maybe it doesn't for a while, but there's still some things as far as preparedness is concerned that we can kind of take from that. But I guess what we'll do, did you have a comment on that before we move on?
No.
I guess what we'll do is I'll play this clip you got with the Hunter Biden, the newest leaks, which are, I don't know if it's actually been confirmed, this Chan 4 thing, if it's actually been confirmed that it's real.
Long hauling, brain fogging COVID victim. It's 4chan.
4chan. Well, I don't know who the hell they are. 4chan
and 8chan back in the day. That's where like a lot of the Q stuff first started going, was on. I don't know if it's 4chan or 8chan, but that's where they found it. My understanding was it was some sort of person who had been, I don't know, he was some sort of federal law enforcement, whether he's a Secret Service guy or something before. They had gone through some of the stuff that Hunter Biden had, and they found his password for his iCloud, I guess. And that's what they got into in this video.
Yeah. Hey, I tell you what, I heard Tyrus on the Gutfeld show talking about this I think it was yesterday or the day before, and talking about how, and this is like the reason that I'm going to let this play real quick. I don't know what she's going to say, but the reason that I'll take this off here because we don't need to stare at her ass. The reason that this is so concerning, and you get people saying, oh, leave the guy alone. These guys got problems, this and that. It has nothing to do with his father, all of that stuff. I think that's completely disingenuous because, one, if it were the Trump family, and you hear it all the time, they would absolutely be going after him, or any Republican. I remember the Bush twins getting over the rails for going out and partying and stuff. So that stuff does happen. At the same time, too, this is, to me, and this is what Tyrus was talking about. He's like, this has been happening for a long time, and this is Joe Biden as a parent deciding that his job, his career is more important than his son's, because he saw this stuff happening, and he was talking about how the reason that Hunter Biden can't stop recording stuff is because his dad knows about it, and this is almost leverage over his dad saying, hey, give me some more money or this stuff's going public. I don't know if that's true or not, but I could see that being the case.
The thing I look at it as is every person in the mainstream media and every person who, particularly Democrats, who are not calling Hunter Biden out on this stuff is a fucking enabler.
Yeah.
Like, you literally are suppressing the story to enable this guy to keep on going and just doing this self-destructive, totally great. So if you're the benevolent, wonderful people that you are, how can you sit back and be a bunch of fucking enablers for this poor guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Joe Biden is the enabler. And now I don't know that Joe even has a fucking clue anymore what his son's doing, just because Joe does. He shakes hand with the thin air, right? He doesn't know what fucking planet he's on most of the time. So, I don't know how much that's in the play now, but he's covered up for him for years. And Hunter Biden shit is relevant in the aspect that his own father with the 1994 crime bill and otherwise, has locked up. It resulted in locking up how many hundreds of thousands of Americans for the shit that they won't look at his own son on.
Yeah.
And so that's where it becomes relevant, that you have a president that has put down laws that, again, we're a fucking banana republic. They're not being subjected to the same legal system that we have to operate under.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's enough to this story that it does deserve at least some sort of investigation, in my opinion, because there is a lot of stuff that intertwines between the two of them. So at the very least, investigate it and find out if there's anything there. But this isn't just a Hunter Biden story. I'm going to play this. You found this video on Rumble where it shows it shows Biden talking about his crime bill from 20, 30 years ago, however long it was, while it's a split screen of Hunter doing his thing.
And hey, everybody, we don't know. I don't know, because we're going to stream this off of Rumble, and YouTube being what it is if we get shut down, head over to Rumble and look at the survival preppers, because we'll be over there. We're going to keep going live if they shut us down again. And maybe we come back on over at YouTube. I think it's like 2 minutes or something like that after they shut us down. So
yeah. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But this is hilarious. I got this on full screen. I'm going to play it here.
If you have a piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, 1/4 of $1, we passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice. Under our forfeiture statutes, the government can take everything you own. Everything from your car to your house, your bank account, not merely what they confiscate in terms of the dollars from the transaction that you've just got caught engaging in. They can take everything. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street.
They must be taken off the street. Unless it's my son, and then we're not going to take him away from your mom, your family, all that crap. It's just, it's bonkers to me how much, and even if this new set of iCloud leak stuff that's coming out, even if it's not legit, there's so much stuff out there anyway. Is there anything really new with this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets back to the thing that Hunter Biden's a mess. He's a mess. He's been a mess for a long time. It's like, okay, well, why is he a mess? Why is he doing it? Like there's something there in his past, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's true or not. I'm almost hesitant to mention it, but I did hear in one report that Hunter Biden referred to his dad was calling like the Peter, but pedo Pete. Did you hear that?
Yeah, there's something with the way they used to communicate on his phone. His dad in his phone was Peter something or other, Peter Collins or something like that. So there was something. I was watching that Jimmy Dore video that you sent me, and he was talking about how allegedly, there's no proof to it or anything, but he was talking about pedo Pete in one thing, and I was like, you know what makes perfect sense. That's all part of that stuff, the behind the scenes stuff that goes on in Washington and with these politicians. It's almost like something out of the West Wing or some, fiction show. But this political life where he's this spoiled rich kid that his parents don't give a crap about him and his dad just pays him off to shut him up. I mean, it almost seems like that. And he knows more about his dad than we'll ever know. And his, the handlers kind of, deal with him rather than his father. So it's just completely just dysfunctional. And this guy is the leader of our country. And that is concerning that, this guy is, quote unquote, leading the country and can't even keep his own house in order. I think that's the part that gets me the most about this. Plus all the shady business dealings. We know all that stuff happens all the time anyway. But this is, not a whole lot different than when you're talking about Sri Lanka and all the stuff going on there where they're talking about nepotism and all that. I mean, it's kind of the same damn thing. And it happens, maybe not family members and stuff, but it happens with who they put in their cabinets and, who gets different jobs in different locations and all of that stuff. So I think there's a story here that's being buried. And I think it goes beyond the Hunter Biden having a freaking problem.
Well, it's the same old stuff, right? The left doesn't want the left hasn't been given the order to take the gloves off with Joe Biden.
Yeah. At
some point when they're like, all right, we're done with Joe Biden, they're going to take the gloves off. But they haven't been because they're still protecting Hunter Biden. You've literally had some of these people that are protecting him have come out and said that, oh, yeah, the whole laptop thing is true. It got suppressed. Oh, we shouldn't have done it. Like you've had some mainstream media that's done that. And here they are again, doing it all over again. Right. So, oh, yeah, it's the same repeat, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that leads to this. It kind of leads to this. I'm going to go there anyway. Yeah. It kind of leads to this Sri Lanka story. But with the Sri Lanka thing, we talked about this last week, how they had taken over the presidential palace and basically booted him. And I was going to play part of this video, but it's terrible loading. I don't know if it's CNN's website. I'll blame it on CNN. I don't care. But it's not loading correctly. But what they're talking about in there is I forget who it is. The prime minister got put in place where this president was. And the whole reason these people were protesting is because they were trying to get rid of him too, that person too. So instead of doing that, they basically ignored everybody in Sri Lanka, put this dude in place. So it's typical government. I mean, that's what our government does is they ignore the will of the people. They ignore why people are pissed off and they go about their merry way doing stuff. What is your What do you know about what's going on in Sri Lanka and all that?
So I talked about this in my podcast episode for tomorrow. And I think you're seeing the rise of populism. I've mentioned it a few times on here. And populism is a movement of or for championing the common man, like the average dude. And typically, populism is made up of people from the center and the right, or from the left and the right and the center, who all get together and they say, hey, we got bigger problems. Populist movements led to the American Revolution, and to a bunch of revolutions, but American Revolution, it led to the French Revolution in 1789, and it led to the Russian Revolution in 1917, something like that. That was all populist. And what all the populism is people are tired, get tired of the establishment. They're tired of the corporations. They're tired of the elites. They're tired of the two-tiered justice system. They're tired of all that. And they rise up and they say something. Think about the founding fathers, right? England was trying to tax us in the Bolivian to pay for its fight against France. So let's go tax the colonies. And the colonies are like, hey, this is BS. Right. And it led literally to a revolution. So what I see with Sri Lanka, you have problems. There's been a lot of look at they just had in the Netherlands, they had the farmers' protests. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Those went on where I think that my understanding was there was shooting involved there. Possibly there was at least some level of violence. You saw the truckers protest up in Canada, and what was happening as a result of that. You've seen the protests in Australia. So you have populist movements that are starting and they're building, and the protests are turning violent. So, and in a way you could argue that both January 6th and the Antifa riots are all populist movements. Yeah. Not that everybody sees together. So I guess the part that's interesting, at least I find it interesting, or I find it concerning from a prepper perspective, is that you see populism happening all around the world right now. And it's ratcheting up. I mean, again, we've talked about who has made a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn off the highway of insanity that we're on. It's still not a year away from last year when the Afghanistan mess up, all that fell apart and everything sits in. Just today's the 13th, right? Yeah. Today, the new inflation numbers came out, 9.1% inflation. That's up from 8.6 the previous 2 months. Yeah. So basically 20%. And we know that they do substitution and all the stuff. So, in Sri Lanka, the people were pissed off mostly over the economy. Yeah. Well, and that's happening around the world. So I guess my long-winded point is, don't be surprised if you don't see more of the Arab Springs, but happening everywhere, happening all over the place. And the potential for outright revolt happening, depending on how bad things get and how much the government decides to clamp down on its people. Now, I'm not just talking about in the U.S., I'm talking about around the world. Keep an eye on it for over the next couple of years. We're not coming out of this economic mess. I mean, we got into this back in the 70s. We got into this in the 70s, and it wasn't until the 80s, in the late 80s and 90s, that we started coming out of it for a while. And only then it was because they blew up the mortgage market and sold a bunch of bullshit loans that we started going on all these high times. So, I think we got a long road to hoe, and I think people are going to be unhappy and pissed off. And when you look at what the government's doing in response to any of it, they're not doing anything. They're shitting on the people. It's the Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake kind of moment. So I think we're in dangerous times. I think that's what it all signifies. Yeah, and that's one of the things I think is one of the major correlations, because like with this January 6th stuff, even before that, the reason that Trump was able to get into office is because of the people of this country being so, just having no faith in the government whatsoever. And then that led to him getting in there, which they thought would never happen. And instead of, reflecting and thinking about, you saw some news media or outlets a couple of times hey, how did this happen? Instead of reflecting and instead of thinking about changing things, they didn't. They went straight after him. They
instead of thinking about the will of the people, and that's exactly what happened in Sri Lanka. Instead of thinking about that stuff and doing something about it, they went directly against them. And I think that happens globally, all different countries. There's a system that they're used to. There's a system that they want in place, and they can't be bothered by us to change that system. So that pissed offedness, I guess, that existed, that got Trump into office, still exists. And I think it exists a little bit on both sides of the aisle. So it's not one side or the other. There's a lot. The trust in government is so low. It's all over the place. It's not just one side.
And what was Trump when he first ran, right? He ran on Drain the Swamp, and he ran against Hillary Clinton, who everybody considered the biggest swamp creature at the time. And why did people vote for Trump? A lot of people voted for Trump based on the whole Drain the Swamp thing. Yeah. And then he failed to do that. So that tells me that obviously, I mean, it's not just like you and I have these conversations and the people watching have these conversations. These conversations are happening all over the United States. They're happening in countries around the world right now. So it's, again, and the economic times are such that we know there's going to be food problems coming more and more because of the whole Ukraine-Russia thing. There's going to be food problems because of transportation costs, right? There's going to be supply shortages on stuff. I mean, I just ordered some printer cartridges. I'm doing some stuff, and printer cartridges off Amazon. We're going to take 2 weeks to get here. When has that ever been the case with Amazon? Right. Yeah. The company's talking about dropping shit. They got so much stuff and they can deliver it so fast. They're going to use drones to deliver it to you. Right. So everything's kind of going askew, and people's tempers are getting more and more upset. And wait till you get to the point where people can't afford to feed their families, or there's not enough food going around to feed their families. I mean, I go to the market now, the chicken section's pretty much decimated usually. And like I looked today just for out of curiosity, but like a little filet mignon steak, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, dude. It was a lot more expensive than what that expensive little tiny piece of meat used to cost. Yeah. Right. So where does all this end? It ends with people being more pissed off unless something happens to fix all this. And part of my fear is that the governments of the world, kind of like in World War I, are looking to make things are bad, and they're looking to make the boogeyman out of people, out of other nations and groups of people. So like, I don't know. I don't see anything ratcheting down. I see it as the easy course. Humans follow the path of least resistance typically. And the path of least resistance is to keep demonizing one another and talking shit and not having our government own up to what it should do. Like, hey, I know, quit spending fucking money right now until we can get the economy under control. Because while we're all sucking a dick down here with our inflation and everything else that's in, they're still spending money like a bunch of drunken sailors.
Yeah.
So nothing's going to change. More people are going to get pissed off. And at some point you get past the tipping point. And we talk about, you don't want to live in that, dude. That is a really bad thing to live through when neighbors are fighting neighbors and you can't go to the store, your kids can't go to school. And every time something does happen, you're scared that your entire family's gonna get wiped off the face of the planet.
Yeah. I think one of the problems too is we don't have real leadership. We haven't had real leadership in this country. And I'm not talking the perfect politician or anything like that, but a real leader of a country that will, do those things necessary to actually fix the country. We haven't had that in forever. I mean, I guess some people would say Obama was, but he was the one that started all this, get in each other's faces and, America isn't the greatest country in the world and all of that stuff. And then Trump got in there and he ratcheted things up to 10. And then Biden's in there just kind of continuing the Obama thing. So we haven't had a leader in there that will actually do things to fix problems in a very long time. And I think that's, one of the big issues with our whole political environment at this point. So
I'd argue that we haven't had a leader that's wanted to fix any of the political issues and any of the systematic issues on the federal level since Kennedy. He got killed for it. He got killed for it. Right. He was going to hammer this. He was going to cut back the CIA. He was going to cut back all this stuff. And that dude ended up getting smoked. And like and people we talk about it all the time. We can say it's a conspiracy. I think the whole mob idea is out because at 75 years past the whole thing, if it had been the mob, they would have released the records. The fact that they're not releasing the Kennedy files in any sort of timely fucking fashion tells me that what are they hiding? Oh, probably something that the government was involved in. Like right now, we knew if Russia killed Kennedy, that would be out. Oh yeah, we should go fight, send some more bombs over to Ukraine. They'd be all about letting that out. No, it's because they had a fucking hand in it. So he's the last guy that really probably, I think, as a president, last person that tried to do anything. And I think every president since then has just added to the house of cards that's now fucking kind of shaking and tumbling around us. You know, you got the Murphy or whoever running around with a blower, gas powered blower. And we got our house of cards hoping it doesn't get blown the fuck down.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, the correlations. It's almost like deja vu between Jimmy Carter and Joe Biden, and the things what the country's going through all at the same time. So, hopefully it turns out kind of the same way where everything kind of pivots back to normal, but there sure is a lot of correlation.
Well, isn't it interesting? We talk about the cycles, right? Bad times lead to strong men make, all that, make good times, weak men, and blah, blah, blah. Well, isn't it interesting that like we go back to get a person who on the economy and everything else is about as fucked up as Carter was?
Yeah.
At the same period of time when all this, everybody searches for something. I get, I don't think it's necessarily, circumstance. I think there's a formula to who people, everybody gets scared. Let's go vote for fucking Joe Biden. And then it gets back to the system too. The fact that this is literally, like the people that they're giving us to vote on are literally the people that like, that's it. Like that's Hillary Clinton, a dude with fucking Alzheimer's. Yeah. Kamala, whatever, I don't know what her fucking story is. Like Ice Queen. I mean, I never thought we would see somebody that would make Hillary Clinton not look like an ice queen. But Kamala Harris at least Hillary Clinton, when she said stupid shit, she had personality. Dude, this woman was like watching a fucking slab of granite talk.
Yeah. See, it's like, I'm not as concerned about Kamala as I was with Hillary, because Hillary is conniving, evil, willing to do whatever it takes to get what she wants. And Kamala, I just don't think has the brain power to get that stuff done. But I mean, there's a possibility. I don't know that Joe Biden survives this whole presidency, and I'm not talking physically. I'm talking or like being alive at the end of it. I'm talking him getting ousted or whatever, and then we may get a chance to see this Ice Queen in action, which is terrifying.
Hey man, don't hold your breath that you're going to see a lot of action if it happens. And I think you could be right. I could totally see Biden in 6 months, or there's no way this dude could campaign. So yeah. I see him in the next year or so. I could see him tapping out. Say, hey, you know what? As everybody's noticed, I shake hands with thin air, and I got a mental problem, and I don't think I'm fit to be president. Here you go, Kamala. You're now the first female president of the United States for more than like 8 hours, right? And then she gets to sit in there and not do anything and, be a mess and watch. Yeah.
The same media that let this guy campaign from his basement and basically do nothing and say nothing throughout that whole campaign are the ones that are going to be turning on him. And they kind of are turning on him at this point, but it's almost like almost asking for permission. Like, hey, is it okay to start talking crap now? Is it okay? Because you've seen a little bit of it, but you haven't seen it full bore yet. So it'll be interesting, because I don't see how it's possible. He can't do it from his basement again. People just won't have it this time.
Hey, man, nobody thought a candidate for the presidency would be able to do a campaign from their basement in the first place. And it happened. So Never say never, man. Never say never.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that we should insist that they have a cardiac monitor on that, like at all times, so everybody can see if he's truly alive or not.
Yeah.
He's a weekend at Bernie's candidate if I've ever saw one.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? We're not going to hear any of the true stories and all that for another 20 years anyway. So, we'll see, but and he's not, I don't think he's necessarily the one calling the shots and doing all that stuff anyway. So I think that his handlers and all that are probably like, hey, if we get Kamala in there, Joe's a little bit easier to control because, we just don't put him in front of the camera as much as possible. And we can basically tell him what to do because he's not going to remember in 30 minutes. So at any rate, I wanted to move on to this Shanghai stuff because this is something they're starting again with their lockdown stuff. And like I said in the beginning, I don't know that I'm too concerned about the whole COVID spread because of what China's doing, because China takes that heavy-handed approach with all their stuff. But it is concerning because it is the new strain of that virus. I can't remember what, the Centurion or something like that they're concerned about. And it's that strain of virus that basically if you've had COVID before, if you've had all the 1,500 jabs, doesn't matter. It's not going to, that doesn't help you out with this stuff. But along with that, you've also got the supply chain issues because a lot of the stuff, Shanghai is that main hub, right, in China?
It's one of them. It's one of their key points. And it just came out of a lockdown, right? Like I think they're 5 weeks
a few weeks
out
ago
of a 2-month lockdown. And look at the headlines there in the Star of India, right? Anger in Shanghai as COVID return spears fear of new lockdown. Well, what is that anger? That's anger in the populace.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Shanghai, I believe, was the city where you heard like people just wailing at night. You saw there was video from like one apartment looking in another of watching like people run in hazmat suits and jerk people out of their apartments. There was one where there was like officials going down the street clubbing dogs to death. People were writing that, hey, they're supposed to deliver groceries because we're not allowed to leave our apartments and no one's delivered groceries. We're out of food. So again, we get back to that whole populist movement. And like you mentioned, the supply chain stuff. If Shanghai locks down again, and that I imagine other cities will probably lock down in China because it's coronavirus, it spreads. So are we looking at another 2 months worth of supply chain interruptions? I mean, what does that make our stores look like? I mean, go walk around, Walmart and look at the things that are missing on the shelves, and increase that.
I had heard, and this doesn't really have anything to do with the supply chains, but I had heard that, how a few weeks ago we were talking about how their banks had been basically, if you were too close to the bank or you were part of the protest, the app on your phone, which they make people have, turned red, meaning that you're COVID positive. Yeah. That there are still people, and this was 4 or 5 weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, there are still people that are locked in their homes because their apps are still, saying that they're COVID positive. Basically, they're still being locked out of the banks, is what it is. So they're using this COVID app as a weapon against, and people are saying that it's because their economy is doing so poorly, and they're not going to admit it. And I mean, who knows with all of that
their
stuff.
Economy. The Chinese economy is in a bad state of affairs right now.
Yeah.
It's in a real bad state of affairs, but it's interesting, right? They're using that app. They're shutting people off from their money. That's what Trudeau did up in Alaska. Yeah. And what are the two groups that they shut off, going back to the populists? A bunch of common people that are like, hey, we're not happy with what you're doing. The people who are shut down and have the app on their phone that doesn't let them into banks in China were all people that went to a protest.
Yeah.
And that's what you had in Canada. Oh, you're at the protest. Let's shut off your bank account. So this is again, and at what point does anybody think that when you have people that are upset shutting off their money is going to make them less upset and defuse the situation?
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting when you think about it that way, because we think of China as this ultra, controlling entity, and then Canada, the free flowing, happy Canadians and all that. But it is kind of the same type of situation. And that goes to show you when things are good, when things are running great, these democracies and all these liberal countries across the world, everything runs smoothly and everything's great. But when things start to get tough, that's when you see the true colors of some of these leaders, quote unquote leaders, come out. that are for the will of the people and, do the right thing and all that crap, until it becomes that bigger issue. And then you see Canada do some of the things that they do. You see Australia, the prime minister down there, do some of the things that they're doing. In China, it's not any surprise, right? But these other countries, it's a surprise. But that's it. I've never really thought about it like that. With China, it's different. It's not to the same level as China's doing it, because they're basically saying, "Screw you. We're gonna take this app that we told you was about this COVID stuff, and we're gonna use it for whatever we want." And that's concerning when you think about where this technology is going in the future. As far as the ways they can track you and the social credit score and all that stuff.
Well, it's like trying to hold back a sand dune, right? In a way, because when you have your first protest of 100 people, when you put the red app on them, okay, this 100 people can't go. But when the system doesn't get any better, and now you're going to lock people down again, next time maybe you have 10,000 people show up. So now you got 10,000 people locked out of your account. Well, just like we would do when we were overseas, when the Americans, as a country, we'd go over there and we would kill people that were collateral damage, we'd say. Well, when you kill somebody's father and their father has nothing to do with something, there's a good chance that son's going to turn into a terrorist. Well, when you lock everybody out of their bank accounts, what happens to those people? Right? Yeah. Their whole families, can turn against the system. Then you have another protest, because it's not, again, the problem is it's not getting better, right? The economies aren't getting better. The lockdowns aren't getting better. We keep here in the US, the B4A or BA4, whatever it is, BA5, the COVID that's going around right now. Maybe you get back to the point where California is locking down, right? And what happens? More and more people get upset. And I think that's the problem. Every time it happens, it's just like sand falling through their hands. They can't they can't stop the number of people now from getting upset and getting pissed off, because they're not fixing the problems. They're still giving lip service to the problems. Right. Yeah. So the people are still experiencing it. And the more, they lock down Shanghai, every time they do that, they run more and more. They run closer and closer to open revolt. Just like Sri Lanka.
And when people in China revolt, things are pretty bad, because that's basically a death sentence out there, doing that stuff. So it's kind of interesting, because you think about, we see this stuff in history books about, governments being overrun, and we see it maybe in third world countries and all that. And I think it's possible in our lifetime, and I'm not saying maybe not here in the United States, but in our lifetime, I think it's kind of possible that we see one of these democratic countries that we wouldn't think something like that would happen. I think in our lifetime we could see something like that, just because of this populist movement, and it could have that tidal wave effect across countries around the world. So it just depends on, because none of them are listening to people. None of them are right. Doing what the will of the people. They're doing exactly what they want to do, and eventually it's going to get to the point where people are just going to be fed up.
Out of the three revolutions that kicked off earlier that I talked about, that kicked off with populist movements, the American, the French, and the Russian Revolution. The American and the French both were kicked off over guns and over weapons, right? The Battle of Lexington, when the British came to take American weapons, and then the Bastille Day, basically in France, when the populace rose up and they cracked the Bastille, which is where they stored and they manufactured a bunch of the French weapons so they could get weapons to fight the revolution.
That's interesting. I didn't know that about France. Didn't work out too well for them. I mean, I don't know how that turned out.
Sure it did. They got rid of the King of France, and the Queen got beheaded, man. The whole Marie Antoinette was let them eat cake. They had the technological breakthrough of for years over there was the guillotine, man. They got so efficient at killing people, they'd roll the guillotine out, turn the big old party in town, and come and start lopping heads off.
Yeah, what I'm saying though is you fast forward a couple hundred years, and they're basically, there's a reason it's a joke.
French. Look at us. We got a president that again, we got a president with Alzheimer's. Right? Like maybe it's cyclical. It's interesting that everything's happening right now, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, I just think it's interesting to watch the stuff that's happening in Sri Lanka, because it's not some huge country. It's not some their political system is far different than ours and all that stuff. But it seems like these revolutions and all this stuff kind of happen the same way, give or take, the details and all of that stuff. But it's kind of interesting to just watch and see how the things unfold, see why it's unfolding. And make make the correlations of the same things that are kind of happening here, maybe at different scales and all that stuff. But they are definitely happening here, and who knows, where all this stuff leads in the future. But I think it is important to pay attention to all this stuff, especially since you see it across the globe.
Yeah. And that's the point. Where does it lead in the future? Because we're already we have a populist movement started in this country already. The fact that, we see eye to eye on more than we don't with Jimmy Dore and people on a lot of things means that there's a populist movement started. You have people from the left and the right forming up in the middle. And so we're already heading down that path. It's whether they divert the path, or do something to stop it is the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, I wanted to move on to this topic. You found this article, and I thought it was interesting that the era of explosive oil is here to stay. I saw, and I was going to get this link, and I forgot to get it the other day, but I saw an article from, I think it was the Associated Press or something like that, where their headline was gas prices plummet 19 cents or something like that. And I'm like, plummet? I mean, they've skyrocketed, a few bucks, but they plummeted 19 cents. But at any rate, with this article, you found this, and I think it's interesting because I absolutely agree with, I don't like it, but I agree with it because I think the $2 a gallon, the $2.50 a gallon gas, those days I think are in the past, and maybe we'll see, depending on the next president, but. It really, I think it's intentional. I think it is this push to go green, which is unfortunate in the fact that I don't think the infrastructure is ready for that at this point yet. But I think, what are your thoughts on it? I think we are in this era where it is going to be, plus just the money that's involved in it. I think the lowest we'll ever see is probably $3.
I don't know. I heard that same shit when gas went over $1 back in the 80s, right? When gas first went over $1, and then as it went up and up and up, everybody's like, "Oh, we'll never see gas, in the $1 or $2 range again." And we did. It's, again, everything's cyclical. So I think because we were able to make it happen, it's obtainable again. I don't, we keep discounting everything to, well, it's their push for green energy. I don't think Biden gives a two fucks about green energy. I don't think he really does. But when you look at, what do you keep hearing from the left? Oh, those evil oil companies are making record profits. And Biden comes out and says, "Hey guys, stop making record profits. Please stop making record profits."
Yeah.
And that's about it. He sent a stern letter. So Biden, who's typically been a supporter of big oil, happens to be the president when we're all sucking. We're all paying more for gas. Big oil is making record profits. So is it really about Biden trying to push a green agenda? Or is it about Biden enriching the oil companies? Because right now, I think that's what's going on. I think this whole thing about, it's because of green and they're trying to push us into cars. No, I think they're just literally causing a bunch of ass. The oil companies don't have to build new refineries. They can just keep doing what the fuck they're doing, and they're making record profits. Why is that? And Biden, again, he comes out. It's not like I expect him to come out and force them into doing something. I don't know how all it works, but what I do know is that's what's really happening. So Biden's not doing anything to change it. I might release some more fuel from the strategic oil reserves that he'll refill off of our tax dollars and pay big oil to do it. So I think that's what's going on. I think it's all a fucking scam. I think they're all getting rich off of it. And they're all playing bullshit, and he's able to blame it all on Putin, even though it's not, the majority of it isn't Putin's fucking fault.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And I want to go back to that, but you had mentioned that, the oil reserves. And I saw this the other day and I thought it was hilarious. This Bloomberg is making me sign up to view the whole article. I read it earlier though, but the title of this is much of Biden's oil reserves will likely end up in China and India. And the reason is because it's lesser quality crude or something like that. But my point with this was, he's pulling this rabbit out of his hat saying, oh, I'm going to release this from the oil reserves and making everybody think it's some great thing. But he's releasing this crap out that we basically can't use. So he's giving it to China. So he's it's the sleight of hand thing. He's saying, hey, I'm releasing all this stuff, but it's nothing we can use. He's not going to mention that part. So I think maybe, it is kind of that house of mirrors type thing, like you were just talking about, where maybe it is, or maybe it is kind of trying to appease both sides, trying to get the green energy stuff, trying to push that stuff for his base, but at the same time, they all know where the money's coming from. So
I think it's a nod, wink, wink. Yes, we're going to push everybody to clean energy by charging more for fuel, but then not building the infrastructure for the clean energy. So basically the fucking infrastructure needs to still be run off oil or coal. And in the process, we'll all help sort of keep inflation down a little bit because we won't have much money to spend, even though the numbers go up because they keep spending, like I said, drunken sailors, and the oil companies will make record profits off of our backs.
Yeah.
I think it all lines up perfect for them, man.
I think that goes back to the lack of leadership that I was talking about earlier, because if the people were a concern, if the inflation, if the fuel prices and all that stuff really was a concern, there would be a concerted effort to get something done. But it's almost like there's a concerted effort to ignore, to deflect, to, just move past the problem and cross your fingers and hope that inflation doesn't go up again. Or maybe we'll just start talking about jobs again, because that's a good number we can talk about. We don't have to worry about the inflation and all that. When
you look at some of the stuff Jerome Powell and some of the others have set up there, they've actually pretty much come out and said, yeah, we don't know what we're doing with it. Like, we don't know how to. And they're getting ready to raise it. Watch, interest rates are going to go up another 0.75 of a point. Right? Yeah. You're going to see another 0.75 interest on the interest rate, maybe more.
So you were talking about back in the Carter days, where this stuff took like a decade to kind of work its way out. I think the Depression was also around the same time frame. It 5-6 years where it was really bad. It took a couple years and then it got really bad, I think, and then it started to tail off. When you dig yourself a deep hole, you just don't miracle max your ass out of it. Scotty just doesn't teleport yourself out of the deep hole. You got to climb out of the hole. Yeah. It takes a while. It ain't easy climbing out of a hole. We're in a deep hole. Well, and that's kind of my question with the next, as far as preparedness goes, the next 3 months, how do you see this? Because right now, that's my major concern. I think about the global stuff, and all of those things always play a factor in my thought process. But right now it's at home. Right. It's paying the bills. It's the energy prices. I saw my gas bill the other day and about shit myself. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And we just got a new furnace. So it should have been lower. But right after we get a new furnace, all the energy prices go skyrocketing. So it's complete loss. But that's my concern at this point. Do you see like this inflation and all that stuff just getting worse? I mean, Biden is supposedly going out to beg for oil in Saudi Arabia. But that's not gonna, that's a bunch of bullshit.
I hope at some point it stops getting worse, but so far it hasn't stopped getting worse. It's just been on us, it's been on that takeoff. When you get on a plane and you take off from the runway and you keep going and you're circling around and you're still going up. The stewardesses haven't come around yet, or whatever the fuck flight attendants haven't come around yet with, the goodies and passing out you can't have peanuts anymore. So passing out like 2 pieces of popcorn or some shit, but you're still in that glide. You're taking off, right? We haven't stopped. It hasn't stalled. It's a couple times it's leveled out a little bit, but We went up from 8.6 to 9.1% inflation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You know, they keep talking about, well, the employment numbers are looking so good because you fucking unemployed everybody.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
People didn't have jobs because you shut shit down. So they didn't have jobs. And now you're like, look at all the jobs we brought back. Really? Like this is the song and dance these fucking bozos are trying to sell.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I guess, I mean, all politicians do it, but Biden was handed the perfect opportunity to do this crap because things had tanked so badly that, and it started to turn around when he got in there, that numbers like this, I mean, it's a given that they're going to look good as bad as they were before. So, yeah, he's taking advantage of it.
And you know, I've said it before, like, look, man, I have no love lost on Biden. Not one bit. I give two fucks about President Biden. And anybody coming in after shutting down the economy like they did, that's a tough spot to be in, right? Like you're going to be in a tough spot. But just like I hold Trump responsible during the pandemic for having a shitty pandemic response. In other words, never even try to get people on the same sheet of music. Just let me go battle with fucking meatheads. It's like, dude, you're the fucking president. Act presidential for a change. Just like I fucking shit on him for that. I shit on Biden for like, dude, I'm sorry. You had the opportunity, just like Obama. You know, when he got in office, I was like, well, maybe he brings some hope and change and it gets better. Let's see. I'll give him hope. And that fucking went up in smoke in about a month.
Yeah.
You know, same thing with Biden. Same thing. Like, dude, you had the opportunity to shine. You had the opportunity to rise above. You had the opportunity to do whatever it takes to fucking make this economy happen. And people have talked about that the economy we should have raised interest rates years ago. So he knew this was coming. The fact that he didn't have a fucking plan of action for it, he knew we were leaving Afghanistan. The fact they didn't have a fucking plan for any of this shit and that they blew every plan up that they had. No, man, they all have missed their opportunity. Again, it gets back to what I said earlier, that I think we've just every president has just compounded the bullshit ever since Kennedy was killed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, you know, as far as the inflation and all of that stuff, I think we talked about it earlier with the lockdowns in China, with the supply chain issues, with shortages. You had mentioned the ink cartridges and all that, which you think about that and you're like, not a big deal. The hell does that matter? But when you think about all the different things like that could go on, things like that could affect the way companies produce things and all of that stuff. Then you've got the energy prices on top of that, which is going to make things more expensive. You've got the drought conditions. Who knows how this year's harvests are going to be and what sorts of how that's going to affect the supply chain.
Hey, here's a question for you. How much is a ream of paper? You know, when you go buy a thing of copy paper?
I haven't bought one in probably over a year, but the last time I bought one, I think it was like $4.
Yeah, $9.95.
$9.95?
$9.95 for a ream of paper, and they're almost out of paper. So you know, it like comes back to the like you mentioned, the whole copy ink or whatever. Well, it's not a big deal until you need to print something. Then it becomes a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. The paper is not a big deal until you need to print something. Then like, oh, okay, now I don't see Kinko's around anymore. So where are you going to go to get your stuff? You know, again, there's second and third order impacts across the society that just make lives more complicated. Okay. Yeah. So if you can't print something and there's no printer cartridges available in your area and it's going to take 2 weeks for Amazon to get it, but you have to have something printed. Now you got to get in your car and go burn a bunch of gas to go to someplace who's going to charge you more because paper's $9.95 a ream and ink's going up. So, you know, all that compounding, you know, again, it just paints I don't see us coming out of it for a while.
Yeah. I went to buy get pedigree dog food, the little soft dog food for my dogs. And it used to be $10 for a 12-pack of those cans. Went the other day because I usually buy 4 or 5 of those to kind of stock up. $14 for one of those. In like a month and a half, it went up $4. And that's, you know, another example of all this stuff. So it is, you know, almost across the board, all of this stuff going up. I didn't do the math on my gas bill, but I'm assuming that was about 22%, somewhere in that range. I would have to actually sit down and do that. But all of that stuff is going up. And when you take all that little stuff and you add it up on a monthly basis, with a lot of people in this country that are already living paycheck to paycheck, it's insane. And then you've got people that have their money in 401ks and their retirement and stuff like that. That's all gone to crap as well. So,
and then what also happens, right? People don't drive as much.
Yeah.
So, and so they're like, okay, I won't go to the store. And usually, like, if they went to the store, they're going to buy a Snicker bar. They're going to buy a little something. That's moving the economy. Now they're sitting at home going, oh, I'm not going to spend my money. That Snicker bar that's $2 or whatever now. That's $2 worth of squash I can get because food prices are getting higher.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all those little sacrifices that we have to make as people these days to try to whittle into that stuff. I mean, maybe we'll do a segment on this, some things that we can do to kind of fight the inflation and stuff. But you've got the amount that you spend on, entertainment and stuff like that. That stuff's got to be the first stuff to go. How many, if you're planning on taking vacations, people planning on, just going up to the mountains and going hiking this summer, that is something that is a big deal because that is, a half a tank of gas, basically a full tank of gas for us to get up and get back, which for me, filling up my truck is $150 damn dollars. There are a lot of things I can do with $150 damn dollars. Especially since everything is so much more expensive these days. And it seems like every other month here, something's breaking in the house that's costing me 10 grand. So I
need to go fill up my truck. I'm down to, I don't usually let it get this low, but I'm down to about a half a tank. And I haven't been filled it up because the next town down the road, which would take me too much gas necessarily to drive through or would make it worthwhile, is like 30 cents cheaper a gallon than where I'm at. But at the same time, it's like I look at it, I'm like, that's $90. It's a 36 gallon tank. So that's about 18 gallons. That's 90 to 100 and something bucks for a half a tank of gas.
Yeah.
And again,
it's insane.
They have the ability to make, like, again, where they come out and say, well, no, this is why. And that's why. And I'm like, dude, 3 years ago, that shit was like dirt cheap. Stop. You don't get any explanations. We did it. We pulled it off before. We can pull it off again. You're choosing not to pull it off. You're choosing to set the conditions that keep gas prices high.
Yeah. 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 And people will blame either the oil companies or they'll blame the decisions by the president or the administration. And I personally think I don't really give a crap what it is. Fix the damn shit. But I personally believe that it's a whole, there's more than just one thing contributing to this whole thing. And it's a concerted effort. And it's absolutely, I think that the whole Russia thing put a monkey wrench in the whole plans. I don't think it was expected to get this bad, but I think it was intentional from the get-go. And I think people planned on making money on it. I know, the oil companies, they understood exactly what happens when a Democrat gets into office and all of a sudden gas prices go up. Historically, it happens every single time. So they understand what's going on. So they're benefiting from it. The people, the Middle East, they're benefiting from it. Everybody's benefiting from it. The only difference is Putin put a monkey wrench into all this shit and made it far worse than any of them ever expected. So now it's a problem that they have to deal with. So, and then, Germany, they're basically Russia's bitch right now. I mean, they got rid of their nuclear power plants. My
understanding is they're turning on some of their coal-fired plants now.
Yeah, go figure. Hey, at least they're doing something.
They need them for this winter.
Yeah. I guess they kind of have to. But at least they're actually admitting there's a problem, whereas our country, our president, won't even admit there's a damn problem. He just tries to push blame on everyone else. Meanwhile, we're the ones, sucking the tit down here.
Wait to see all those heating bills this year for this winter for the heating bills that everybody's going to catch. How many people up in the Northeast and the North are on diesel fuel for heating their stuff? How many are on natural gas? All this other stuff, dude, you're going to have people, it's going to be one of those. I think we got comfortable. I remember as a kid, people would be like, all right, keep the air conditioning at like 85 and you keep the house at like 55 and put on a coat or take off a shirt or something like that. Right. You regulate it that way. And then I don't know, in the 90s and the 80s, 90s and after is like, I'm going to keep my house, nice and cold. I think people are going to have to rethink that.
I think it's because of the way,
a lot of money.
I think it's because of the way we were raised, because we, as kids, that's what we had to go through. So we were like, when I get older, I'm not going to have my house be roasting like that. Or when I get older, I'm not eating the generic cereal. I'm getting the good stuff, and we kind of gravitated towards that mentality where now that, now that we're getting older, I'm kind of rethinking that whole thing, because it is, to that point where it's like, okay, what is the temperature that I can handle? That I can be uncomfortable, but still tolerate it, and lower that energy bill. Honestly, I'd prefer this in the wintertime, because I got firewood.
And I think
in the summer, you don't have a choice.
Too, in a way, it's not a good thing that you're in a position that people are in a position they have to do it. But I think it's a good thing that people are looking at that stuff and going, you know what? I don't need all this stuff the way I had it, and let me cut back. I do, and I got a bunch of extra stuff, it's like, wow, I got too much stuff. And so maybe just you mentioned going camping earlier, right? Like, oh, going camping is such a pain. But I remember as a kid, like, that's how families took vacations. They went up and sat on the side of a river somewhere and ran around in the water, got sunburned during the day, and all the adults got bombed at night and get up and dirty and do it the next day, right? Because that's what you could afford. Like, we couldn't afford it. Like, the idea of staying in a hotel as a kid was like, that wasn't going to happen. Like, that was where all the fancy pants rich people go stay. And so now, what do you see? You see the van life thing happening. You see people, more and more people, doing tents, going camping, getting back to the outdoors, because it's it's not as expensive.
You got to incorporate that into your lifestyle. Yeah. Incorporate the vacation into your lifestyle. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, the things that I guess we just get used to it, and life's been good in the United States for the longest time, and now it's time to kind of tighten the belts and see where it goes from here. I've got all the hope in the world that it's not going to get any worse, but I don't know. I mean, it absolutely 100% would not surprise me if it did. It hasn't not. For I don't know how long now, a year at least. I don't know. You guys be the judge, whatever your litmus test in, but it hasn't not gotten worse. Yeah. In my opinion, like a year now. So if it hasn't not gotten worse, that means it may eventually, maybe, but right now I don't see it not getting worse, because it hasn't stopped, and it's accelerated again. 6 to 9.1. We just gained another 0.5% on, on interest. Yeah. And that's not the real number. The real number is probably closer to 20%, or the number that if they calculate it the way they used to, it's closer to 20%. So, but again, it's political football. It's they change the rules, move the goalpost, and and then that way we don't realize, the average person doesn't realize how bad it actually is. With that, I think we are done today. I did forget to mention, though, we are going to have Daisy Luther on with us on Sunday, which is going to be a fantastic show. Going to be a lot of fun. We are going to be talking about some stuff that's happening to her, some censorship and all that. I'm sure we will go through a few other things as well, some prepping stuff, and who knows where the conversation between the three of us, God knows where the conversation will end up going. But have you talked to her about, other than the censorship stuff, what we're going to be talking about? Or is it just kind of played by ear?
I think we're going to be mostly focusing on that, right?
Yeah. What's going on with her?
She just got the organic prepper got hit again we talked about before, by NewsGuard. Not again by NewsGuard, but got hit by another censorship attempt. So it'd be good to talk about that.
Yeah. And it's pretty interesting, and not, I guess not interesting. Maybe that's the wrong word, but it's kind of the trend where things are going, as far as the information that you can get, and this battle against misinformation and all that stuff. And that whole one side of the argument thing, it's, if it affected everybody the same, I wouldn't have such an issue with it, but it does. It only affects, it seems like, it's 90% of it is one side of the story, and that's what's concerning. And if they're able to do that, then basically they can go back to the way it used to be, where there's not as many questions being asked about the things they're doing. and they can just go along with their merry way and do the things that they want to do, and keep that uninformed public the way they want it. So, anything else before we get out of here, Brian?
No, man, good show.
Yep. All right, everyone in the chat, I appreciate y'all joining in today. Like I said, make sure join us on Sunday night. We're going to have Daisy on with us from the Organic Prepper. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you have any ideas or any questions or anything like that you'd like us to ask her, just leave me an email, send me or Brian an email, and I'll write those down, and we'll see if we have a chance to ask her those in the show. But with that, take care and prepare, everyone. We'll talk to y'all later.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Survival Preppers. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to join us on YouTube for our weekly live shows. For more information or to connect with Duff and Dale, visit thesurvivalpreppers.com or thebugOutlocation.com for members-only content and prepping courses. See everyone next time.